Hi everybody, this is Noelle from Petitti's, and we are doing a spotlight on shrub roses. You might also know them as landscape roses. So these are going to be easy, repeat blooming, fairly disease resistant, just kind of ever blooming roses that you can put out in the landscape. Sometimes they're very low and mounding like a ground cover. Sometimes they're miniature shrub, very compact. Sometimes they're a little bit bigger and kind of rounded in their habit. So there's lots of different varieties, but the key here with your shrub rose or your landscape type rose is that it grows on its own root. There is no bud union, there is no graft. It is true root hardy, so therefore they are very cold hardy in this area, and sometimes we need that in Northeast Ohio. It just kind of depends what the weather does, but like everybody says around here, you blink and the weather changes, and it's just like that in the winter for us as well. So these types of roses, shrub roses, work really, really well for us in this area. Okay, to begin with, to be successful with shrub roses, you need a few things. So the first thing, of course, is a full sun condition. It's 6 or more hours of direct sunlight in that area. If you have less than 6 hours of sunlight, the plants probably will survive just fine, but your flowering is going to be at a minimum. So I'd really encourage you to make sure they're in that full sun condition. The other thing with roses is they do enjoy well-drained soil. So again, in Northeast Ohio, we have a lot of clay soil here. They don't particularly care for that. So if you can amend your soil with organic matter, increase the drainage. Once they get established, they have really, really good heat tolerance and slight drought tolerance. So that's fine, but just be aware that, again, starting with a well-drained area, raising the roses up in a raised bed, that's always a great thing to do so they can drain out and not get waterlogged, okay? The thing about watering in our area, and it's typical for most of your plantings, is you're really going to want to do 1 inch of water 1 time per week. A slow and deep watering is always better than multiple very quick shallow watering, okay? So just be aware of that. If you have a 1/2 inch of rainfall that week, you just have to supplement a 1/2 inch of irrigation. So it works out really, really nicely, okay? With roses and feeding, we typically use and recommend rose tone. Rose tone is an excellent food to feed your roses. It's from Espoma. You can also incorporate the iron tone product with it, but with rose tone, you are going to be applying it once a month, May through August. We typically stop feeding roses in August. The reason being is we don't want them to push on more new growth and get really damaged by winter conditions. With landscape roses or shrub roses, we don't have to worry about that too much. So if you forget and you apply a fertilizer in September on your roses, your shrub roses, I don't think you really need to worry about it too much. Okay, now pruning with these guys. Really, if you can get out there and deadhead, first of all, it's not necessary, but it definitely makes the plants look a little bit nicer. And so if you can go through and clip some spent flowers, some spent stems, no problem. These plants are going to produce. They are so vigorous and so floriferous that they will continue to produce buds and blooms for you as long as they possibly can throughout the growing season, okay? But if you can go in and clean them up every once in a while, it's nice because like this one, there's a lot of petals in this little Sunblaze rose, but they're all kind of sticking there and browning on the stem. So if you can remove that, that's gonna make the plant look a lot tidier and just better in the landscape. Okay, also with pruning, wait until late winter, early spring, and just before these plants start to green up, you can go in and really give them a good haircut. Most of your shrub roses want to grow on new developing wood. So you really don't even need the older, thicker stemmed parts of that plant. So remove that really old, woody, any of those areas. Of course, the 3 Ds, disease, damaged, or dead parts of that rose. There's probably not going to be very many of that. And then go ahead and clean it up and just find some really nice, maybe a half dozen nice green, thick stems that are nice and healthy, and just go ahead, cut them back to maybe 6 inches tall, and you're ready to go. That rose is gonna be ready to fill out and bloom for you. Okay. Attributes wise, roses obviously are very colorful in our garden. We enjoy all the different colors. With shrub roses, it's not the fact that they are the biggest bloomers, the showiest bloomers. They're not necessarily that fragrant either. Some have a slight fragrance, some don't. But it's the fact that they are constantly producing for you, constantly rebudding and reblooming. So it's really that continuous color throughout the season. Again, depending on the types that you like, you could have low ground cover roses, medium size rounded, a little bit taller hedge types. It just depends what you want to grow out in the garden. Are they deer resistant? Are they bunny resistant? No, not necessarily. Roses have been developed to have the flowers on the outside and the thorns are on the inside. So you need to be careful when you're cutting them. But other than that, still the deer, the bunnies will come over and they will eat the flowers. The petals are one of their favorite things. So just be aware that you can net them, you can spray repellent on them, you can plant kind of other repelling plants around them. All of those types of things help, but do be aware that they can get browsed. Okay. With roses, if you are growing a rose that has multiple petals, it's what we call a double petaled flower, where you can't see the inside of the rose, guess what? That is a rose that the pollinators don't really come to. Don't get me wrong, if you're growing a red rose like a petite knockout, and the hummingbirds will see that and be drawn to the red color, but you can't see inside that rose. So they're not necessarily gonna go towards the nectar. If you're growing a single rose that has kind of an open flower and you can see the center of the flower, like this one. This is actually, oh gosh, I already lost it. This is Oh So Easy Urban Legend, okay? Inside that flower, you can see all the pollen, you can see the center of that flower. So pollinators are gonna go right into the middle of that flower and get the nectar and the pollen they need, okay? So be aware of that. If your goal to grow roses is to attract pollinators, you really need to grow the single, more open flowers versus lots of petals or a tightly twisted, budded rose, because they won't be able to get into those flowers. Okay. Cutting, obviously, drying, obviously, for potpourris and those types of things, no problem whatsoever. There's plenty of flowers to cut and use as you wish. Okay, now let's go over major families, and I think one of the best ones out in the garden actually is the miniature Sunblaze family. Miniature Sunblazes I have right here. They're grown in containers for you, so you can just set them out. Then for the winter, you go ahead and put the container either in a protected side of the house, mulch around that container with leaves or a hardwood mulch, and give them some protection late winter. You can also bring these containers inside the garage. Again, late winter, you want the foliage to kind of yellow back and also drop before you're protecting them for the winter. But bring them in the garage and then just water them lightly once a month over the winter months, and they'll do fine. You'll start bringing them out in spring. You'll start seeing them green up and leaf out, and they work really, really well. They also work very well on the ground, so don't be afraid to grow them as a nice little miniature edge or border. And there's so many different colors of the Sunblaze series. I don't even know. I think we're probably around a dozen different colors or so. But I have peach in front of me, and I think peach is one of the most beautiful multicolor blends out there in this shrub rose kind of category, if you will. I have Autumn Sunblaze here, which is a really bright sort of corally orange. I have Autumn Sunblaze here, which is a lighter yellow orange, and there's lots more. So it just kind of depends what you prefer in the miniature rose family. There's also a miniature knockout, and it's called Petite Knockout. I mentioned it. It's a bright red flower. It gets no more than about 12, 18 inches in the garden, and same with the Sunblaze. They get right around the 12, 18 inch mark, maybe 24 inches tall at the most. But these plants, again, these miniatures stay nice and low, and they really can be combined with other perennials, other smaller shrubs, again, making a beautiful edge. So definitely check out your Petite Knockout. The next series that I'd like to talk about, again, is kind of in between a sprawling ground cover rose and kind of a medium-sized shrub rose, and that's Drift. And I have this Drift out in front, and that is Sweet Drift, and it is a beautiful doubled pink. But again, Drift has about a dozen different color varieties, so whatever you're looking for, any color of the rainbow, Drift is going to be very, very helpful. They're not sprawling. They really only grow to about 2 foot wide and maybe 1 to 2 foot tall maximum, but great as a ground cover right in the front border of the garden or landscape. And again, just wonderfully repeat blooming and so on. The next one that I'd like to talk about is the Oh So Easy roses, and these are PW, or Proven Winner Shrub Roses. And Oh So Easy, again, there's lots of different varieties in the Oh So Easy shrub rose family. Some are very short and compact. Some are a little bit larger and more rounded in habit. So you do need to look at your tags, research a little bit before you purchase those roses, because they will vary across the board. Again, I have Urban Legend here. Urban Legend just doesn't seem to stop blooming. And again, because it has an open flower with double petals around that open flower, no problem. The pollinators are even kind of buzzing around it right now as I stand here. But there are some that are closed and a little bit more doubled petaled, or have more of a petal count, and those not so much. So again, just depending on what color you choose, the Oh So Easies are a good rounded kind of mounded shrub rose. Probably the most famous of the shrub roses that many people know are the Knockout series. So the Knockout family of roses, there are many colors. I think we're probably at about 6, 7 colors. There are actually new ones that are going to be coming out. A new kind of deeper yellow is coming, and also an orange. So again, that family sort of is expanding, but they were the original shrub rose, landscape rose family, you know, over 20 years ago when the first Knockout came out. And those roses were touted for their cold hardiness, and they definitely have that and definitely grow very well for us. Over the years, just like with the Knockout family of roses, over the years, they have gotten increased disease resistance. Sure, we see a little bit of powdery mildew here or there, or maybe we see a little black spot here and there, but for the most part, with all of the landscape roses, the foliage is clean and beautiful. You see very little spotting. You see very, very little damage. Just gorgeous. So again, that has been a major improvement with landscape and shrub roses, because they just look beautiful out there in the landscape pretty much all the time throughout the growing season. Okay, the one thing that I do have to mention with shrub roses, and with any rose actually, is there is no insect resistance. So again, besides protecting them from the wildlife browsing, be aware that they still will have insect issues. And of course, there's lots of different issues for roses out there. So do try to keep, again, try at first to kind of remove any insect issues, maybe with a hard stream of water first. Try that. Try removing them physically from the plant. In the case of like Japanese beetles, okay, go ahead and just pull them off and throw them in a bucket of soapy water. And then you can go from there and sort of increase and apply different types of insecticides for the type of problem that you're having. I like to start with neem oil. I like to apply neem oil at night when the pollinators aren't active. And that's kind of my first go-to after I try to spray insect issues off or try to prune or pick insect issues off. So try that. I think you'll have success with it. But again, with landscape roses, they tend to grow through their problems and just keep on producing for you. So again, full sun, well-drained soil, mulch around them helps as well. You don't need that. You can kind of reduce that splashing of water that sometimes can cause some disease issues. They really are very, very disease resistant. All categories, all types that I mentioned today. Keep on clipping when you can. It's not necessary, but it definitely tidies up the plant, reduces other issues that might come from disease or insect, and just feed them. Feed them about monthly with rose tone, May through August, and you're ready to go. Enjoy.